Okay, we're gonna do the community Q&A. So if you have a question, raise your hands, and Jen and Marissa have got microphones in their hands. You can see them holding them up right now. They're gonna run over, pick someone who's got their hands up, and then once that microphone reaches you, you can talk into it and ask a question. And I'm gonna do my best to answer it, no matter what it is or how hard that question is. I'm gonna come up with some kind of response. I don't guarantee it's a response that you're gonna be happy with, but there will be a response. All right, let's get started. Who's got questions? We got one right here. Oh, yeah.
So I saw the Framework desktop has a PCIe 4-lane slot in it. Is that correct? Would you consider an open-ended PCIe slot so that you could fit a physically larger card in that slot?
We did actually look at that. As far as we can tell, that's not spec compliant. In general, whenever we can, we like to stay spec compliant. And we've seen, I think actually even some recent news stories about people doing creative things with PCIe slots in their motherboard designs that resulted in some problems. So especially for a totally new product form factor in a totally new category, we want to play it safe in areas where we don't want to introduce invention risk, so that we can basically concentrate that invention risk on the things that we really, really need to solve. So that's not to say that if the community sees it as something that's useful, it's not something we might do in the future. But for this go around, it is just a normal, standard, spec compliant 4-lane PCIe slot.
Is there space on the board for a physical 16-lane connector that you would wire
if
with
someone
whatever you have
takes
available?
a Dremel and voids their warranty, and we're not going to encourage this, and slices open something, it may work, but that's not something we've tried.
No,
Let's go to the next question, because I know we got a lot of questions. All right, who's got another question?
Hi, over here. Oh, testing, testing. Hello? There we go. Sorry, I'll stand up.
Have you given
All the
any
way over here.
consideration down the road to a Framework phone?
We got a question of a Framework phone. That is a great question. That is a great question. Unfortunately, you can see the outline in my pocket. This is an iPhone. I worked at Apple for several years. I'm unfortunately stuck to this at the moment. However, if the shape, the outline in my pocket changes in some way, then you'll know that we're testing and developing a Framework phone, probably. But actually, phone is a category that we know is one of the biggest generators of e-waste. We know it's a place that there are limitations on repairability and upgradability. Obviously, aside from Fairphone, who are doing some really awesome stuff, and HMD actually are doing some great stuff on repairability, it's a hard space. There isn't a lot of great options for consumers out there, especially as you get into the premium end of things. It is a category that we're not going to enter until we are very, very confident that we can deliver something that's going to be a success. Because I mentioned at the start of the presentation earlier, there's this giant graveyard of consumer electronics startups. Half of that graveyard is phone companies. So it's not a category that we take lightly. We're not going to enter it until we are so confident that we're going to win in that category. All right, who's got other questions?
Hi,
Oh yeah, we got one right here.
Hi, Mark Hockman with PC World. I'd like to hear a little bit more about tariffs. We have China tariffs, we have Canada tariffs, we have tariffs on chips. So you guys have a lot of modular products. Can you give me a sense for how pricing is going to be affected if tariffs go into effect?
I got 10% of that, I'm sorry.
You know what it is? Come up here. Tariffs.
Tariffs, everyone's favorite topics, tariffs. All right, we got half our supply chain team and half our logistics team here, and you can see their hair graying live, as you watch them. Tariffs obviously is this unfortunately very dynamic space right now. We have been anticipating this for a while, actually since starting this company back in 2020. Right from the start, we built our supply chain from scratch, knowing that international trade and international logistics was going to continue to get more and more difficult. And so right from the start, actually, we established our manufacturing base in Taiwan. So our main manufacturing partner, Compal, you can see some Compal folks here today with us. They are headquartered in Taiwan. they actually have a factory in Taiwan as well. So we were able to partner with them right from day one and start production in Taiwan, which means that all of our framework products, the framework laptop, the framework desktop, we assemble them. We do SMT, which means mainboard assembly, and the final system assembly in Taiwan. And then we actually warehouse in Taiwan as well, our partner Demerco in Taiwan, and ship directly from there. So at least for our systems, our main boards, basically the most expensive parts of our product catalog, we actually are not impacted by tariffs, even as things are chaotic right now. Some of our modules, actually, we are impacted a little bit, but we've been really deliberate there as well about continuing to diversify our supply base. And so you're not seeing us like reprice things right now, as I think you're seeing some other companies do. It's something we've been prepared for. And obviously, as like we continue to see more happen in the world around tariffs, that's something that we're gonna continue to stay on top of, our awesome supply chain logistics teams.
I did want to go back over to the Fairphone that you mentioned Fairphone earlier and having that going back into the phone market. Taking that in mind, I'll ask a new question in terms of what do you think about like partnerships with other open source companies such as Fairphone, for example? Maybe not say you make your own phone, but maybe joining alliances with other open source companies that are also trying to get started and maybe make an alliance out of it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. We love working with really any other company that's mission aligned and philosophy aligned with us. So we've obviously been working a lot with Linux distro partners pretty closely. So you can see on our site, we've got some officially supported distros. So we've been seeding units to folks at Fedora, to some of the NixOS community members and developers. Oh yeah, some Nix users out here. Like Bazite, there's like a long list there. But when it comes to hardware, actually, that's something that we definitely want to do too. And we see like in the framework community, a lot of both hobby level and kind of small business level hardware development happening. And so whenever we see like a cool project in the community or in the Discord, we actually reach out to the developers who are creating stuff and then like see, can we do anything to help you? And sometimes we end up doing things like sending people like literally reels of like SMT parts that they can't get a hold of normally, just to like accelerate their development path, or send them like if someone's building a thing and they've got maybe an Intel mainboard and they need an AMD mainboard to test with too, we'll just send them a mainboard. So like that's stuff that we love to do, and we want to keep encouraging the community that way.
Yeah, I spoke with a few other people here, and a few of us have been bummed out that we missed out on the investment opportunity. Is there going to be any possibility in the future of more investment from fans?
We are really deliberate and careful about fundraising in general. Like there is, you know, we're here in San Francisco, we're here in Silicon Valley, and there is this tendency for startups to get like addicted to the fundraising process and addicted to investment and addicted to like talking to investors. And that's something we've been like very deliberate to avoid. We did obviously raise a couple of rounds, a seed round, a Series A round that we brought in like traditional angel investors and traditional VCs. And part of the reason we didn't do like a community round earlier than that is that we wanted to make sure that like we could go out to the community showing enough longevity as a company that it didn't feel like we were out there like basically begging for money from like the people who believe in us the most. And we wanted to make sure that like we were at a place of stability where we could do that with confidence. And so as we look forward into the future, we still want to be avoiding a place where we're venture focused, or we're investment focused, we're fundraising focused. We want to stay product focused. But each time we do fundraising in the future, if we do fundraising in the future, that community investment process, I mean, obviously it was like a little tricky to manage that, but the results I do feel really good about, like getting folks from the community in and having a stake in our success. So that's something that as we do fundraising in the future, we do want to recreate that and probably do it in a way that is a bit more streamlined and maybe in a way that like is a bit more scalable than like the very manual effort that we had this first time around. But yeah, definitely thank you for the belief in what we're doing.
Hi, my name's Kavir. I think I speak for a lot of the community when I ask, have you given any thought to a framework printer?
A framework printer. We've been teasing this for like years on our social channels. Printers are the only category that's worse than phones. There isn't even a graveyard of printer companies because no one's even bothered to try. It's just such a nightmare of a category to try to enter. The challenge for printers for us is that actually we think we can probably make a more repairable printer. We have no idea how we can do that in a way that's reasonable as a business, like in a way that like we can do that and it's not just like destroying us as a company to be like throwing money at this printer that we can't like possibly make money off of. And that's not to say like we revolve around money or like our product roadmap is based on money, but like at a certain point we have to think about if we're going to take a bunch of really amazing engineers and designers and supply chain people and have that section of our team work on something, is it going to be something that we just don't see a path to like ever making money on? Or is it going to be something that we can invest in, start a new product category like the Framework Desktop, for example, be able to continue to grow it over time and have that become something that's self-sustaining and then fuels our expansion into other product categories. So like that drives a lot of the consideration into the categories we select. And it's like part of why, even though like we all hate printers and like no one loves their printer, that's part of the reason that even though like from that perspective, it'd be great to have a framework printer, it's gonna be really hard to have a framework printer.
Hi, I'm curious if you can share any of the benefits that you've seen from the community investment round. I think it's a very respectable thing that you did to open it up to the community. And maybe it's still early, but I'm curious if you have anything to share in that.
Yeah, definitely. So we've like reached out to the community investors a couple of times with just like different asks. Basically, like I send out investor updates to like our full set of investors, community investors, and traditional investors. And each time I send out an update, I include like a few asks. Usually they're like just pretty straightforward things to like reach out into people's networks. So like one, for example, was as we were preparing for the Framework Desktop, one of our asks was to start to get in touch with game developers and publishers so we could show their titles running on Framework Desktop. And so I sent out that ask and we got like a couple of cool connections. And so like, you know, as we do demos in the future and as we have like screenshots on our website, some of those titles will start to show up.
Hi, I'm Albert. I was just wondering, so there's like a lot of kind of possible different futures for form factor that might occur, you know, kind of replacing laptops, enhancing laptops, thinking like AR glasses, those kinds of things. You guys seem particularly well positioned to take advantage of these things because, you know, the main boards, you know, you can swap out into different hardware. Are there any things around like kind of the integration with different form factors or different use cases entirely that you guys think you might bring in-house, or do you kind of hope that just stays a community effort?
Yeah, sure. No, that's a great question. So one of the things about our product category selection, so there's that business dynamic of like, can we actually make this successful as a company? Another key part of this is that we select categories where the use cases are stable and mature. And so like the key thing here is that for something like a laptop or a desktop, the use cases have remained like roughly consistent now for like a decade or decades running, which means that the form factors are consistent and the way people actually like replace and reuse and upgrade their products and product cycles they behave through, those things are all consistent. So that like, as we're looking at a category like a laptop or a desktop, we can like project out a decade in the future and roughly understand what people are still gonna be doing a decade from now on a laptop or a desktop. And that lets us design the entire user experience, the hardware architecture, and the form factor of the thing around that knowledge, knowing that like we can lock in an industrial design now and 10 years from now still have that be relevant, still have to be useful. As we look at something like AR glasses or VR glasses, the use cases are still really nebulous. Like there's some things that are sticking, but that's gonna continue to evolve as all the companies in that space test and figure out what actually works and what doesn't work. I actually worked on VR for 7 years as part of Oculus for 2 years, and then 5 years after we got acquired by Facebook. And I can tell you that even now, Meta does not know what VR is going to be in 10 years. And so obviously we're going to let Meta continue to spend $10 billion a year to figure out what VR and AR is, what that form factor is, what the use cases are. And then once they spend that, and that ecosystem, that category is mature to a place where with confidence we can say, 10 years from now, that thing's still gonna look and feel roughly like that, then that's our time to enter.
Hi, great presentation. How are the thermals of the Ryzen line and the new 13-inch mainboard and laptop?
Yeah, the thermals are great. I mean, AMD's done a great job with the Ryzen AI 300 series. So actually they are all the 28, 30 watt class processors across the Ryzen 5, Ryzen 7, Ryzen 9. And we did improve the thermal system. We replaced the thermal interface material. But basically, in general, the AMD software around power management and core management and like which stuff goes on the like the Zen 5 versus the Zen 5C cores that are now also in that mix works really well. So it's like you don't really have to think about it. It just runs smoothly and runs fairly efficiently.
Hi, I'm Ryan. Congratulations on all the different product launches. It's more than I had ever expected in such a short period of time. I'm curious though, you've released a couple of different laptop form factors now, and each one kind of seems like it's designed around its own internals. Is there any plan to release just different chassis that people can maybe just put the 13-inch into, like maybe somebody needs a 14-inch or a 15-inch and they can just reuse the 13-inch internals or whatever you're doing with the 12-inch? What's your kind of view on that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. Even when we started the Framework Laptop 12, we thought, should we take the Framework Laptop 13 mainboard and build a similar plastic TPU overmolded chassis that is a convertible chassis? And as we start to put the thing together and like kind of map out the architecture and map out the industrial design, it was just clear that if we were gonna like really try to attack and win that category, like that form factor segment, we need to optimize for that form factor segment. And that's why we don't have like, a dozen different lines of laptops. So we're trying to like optimize each one. We're picking the fewest possible number of points across the entire laptop space and making sure each one is like really, really optimized. We're not like balancing trade-offs within that. At the same time, like we want to see other people come in, take our main boards and do cool stuff with it. Like we've got the Beth Deck out there, which is a gaming handheld. There's like the CyberDecks. Like people have built retrofit main boards into like old MacBook Pros and old ThinkPads. So there's definitely space there for the broader community to take like all of our open source documentation, take main boards and be able to build it into other form factors beyond what we do.
Can you speak to any updates you have coming on CPUs and GPUs for the 16-inch by chance, like AI Max, anything like that?
Next question. No, I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. No, actually, the key thing here is that we don't announce anything until we are done and ready and confident in it and ready to ship, basically, or ready to at least start opening orders. And so like everything you saw today, like all the products we had laid out here, those are all things that are like done and ready as products. And so obviously like we are nowhere near done with Framework Laptop 16. We've got a lot on our roadmap on it, but there's nothing that at this moment we're ready to take and say like, okay, this is done, let's announce it, let's open it up right now. So definitely look in the future for a lot more Framework Laptop 16.
Hi, is this working? Okay. So I'm really excited to hear about the 12-inch framework and the desktop, but I have a desktop question, which is about the memory. I'm not going to throw food, but can you talk more about the design decision not to make it modular and whether in the future you might have an even more modular desktop? Although that's probably jumping the gun.
Yeah. So the question here was around the memory on the Framework desktop, the Ryzen AI Max. And so like this starts to go like deeper than I am actually like able to meaningfully speak to around basically like processor architecture. But Ryzen AI Max from the beginning was designed around LPDDR5X, like the 256-bit memory bus. That works because it uses 8 LPDDR5 packages arranged as like very, very careful layout around the processor. So there's this like very deliberate fan out of signals for DDR, the LPDDR, to actually make that work at all at the speeds that it's running at. And so like that was what AMD did when they designed it. But the first time we heard about Ryzen AI Max, when they started pitching us on this, the first question that we had was also like, oh, okay, well, can we just modularize? Can we take LPCAM and make LPCAM work on this? And we thought AMD was just gonna say like, no, of course not, we didn't design for that. But they didn't, like they are really good partners. So the first thing that AMD did when we asked that question was actually go back and bring in their technical architects. And they spent like weeks like really, really digging into this. Like, okay, we're not just gonna say no, like is it actually possible? Can we do LPCAM? And so they did a bunch of simulation, like they showed us the simulation results. They did a bunch of test layouts, a bunch of simulations, and determined that if we were going to bring in something like LPCAM to modularize it, the memory bandwidth, we would have had to cut it down to like less than half of like the memory bandwidth, at which point it just like doesn't make sense to modularize it. And so like the entire point of Ryzen AI Max was that you're getting that massive memory bandwidth to be able to get the gaming use case, AI work use case, like all those other use cases to be like really good. And so like that's like why we say it's a trade-off. Like the trade-off to us was, this is worth it. Like we want that performance. We think there is a need for that performance in the desktop PC space in that small form factor. And so we're gonna deliver that performance, even if it means that we're not able to deliver memory modularity on it. And like I said, like I actually did mean it. Like that is what drove our pricing decision on that product. Like as you look across that 32 gig, 64 gig, 128 gig config, the memory pricing, the memory upgrade pricing is like pretty close to what it is on our framework laptops. So it's like much, much less than you'd see from like Apple or other brands when they price their memory upgrades.
Okay, next question is actually by Beth, maker of Beth Deck, which you might have seen out in the event space.
All right.
Hi there. So you're not making a printer or a phone. What are some hypothetical things that you would like to make in the future for the company?
Okay, what I'd like to announce today is the framework tractor. No, we joke about it occasionally internally, but actually we do these like internal workshops where we lay out like the vision for framework across 20 years, and the 20-year roadmap always ends in a tractor. And part of the reason we do that is to just make it really clear that like when we look at what we're doing, what we're addressing is not that laptops aren't good enough or that laptops should be more repairable. What we're addressing is that we're in an entire industry that revolves around optimizing for a company's profits over consumer rights and over the environment. And we see that across everything, all the way out to tractors. And so as we think 20 years out, what we want is a framework tractor.
Hi, Daroff. There's a guy from SanDisk. So to kind of segue off that last question, so for like other revenue streams down 10 years from now, 20 years from now, understanding that consumers your core competency, if you have discussions about enterprise,
definitely.
IoT servers, edge servers, that type of thing seems to be in your wheelhouse and where you could bring innovation to that enterprise part of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So when we started out, we first started announcing and sharing the framework laptop back in 2021. Our focus was entirely consumer, in part because we expected that businesses wouldn't trust a startup that was literally a year and a half old at that point on something as important as a laptop. So we actually were just purely consumer focused. And what we saw literally from that first moment, the first announcement of the 11th gen framework laptop 13, was a bunch of businesses reaching out, a bunch of IT managers reaching out, mostly from SMB, but also from enterprise as well. And basically what we realized was that the thing we were building was not just a consumer product, it actually solved like real problems that businesses face. And so we took that, and we have Chris here somewhere. Chris is part of our founding team, started building the Framework for Business program. And over the last couple of years, we've been expanding the Framework for Business initiative based on that inbound interest. And so we've actually like doubled the size of the team over the last year on Framework for Business, and the business sales of Framework Laptop 13 are actually growing faster than the consumer sales. Like consumers growing fast, business is actually growing even faster. And this is something that we're continuing to invest in really heavily. We've got Jen over here, who's our chief product officer, who's leading our overall business efforts as well. And then especially as we look at the new products we announced today, Framework Desktop and Framework Laptop 12, those are both products that, even though similarly, like we started from a consumer viewpoint, we designed them knowing that we better make sure this works well for businesses because we know it solves problems for businesses too.
Hi, Ralph. A wonderful presentation. I guess my question is how the brand will evolve as you try to go more mainstream. How do you balance this kind of room of hyper enthusiasts with folks like, I don't know, my mom or a sibling that is going to need more hands-on support and less tinkering?
That's a great question. This is something that Marissa and I debate regularly. Marissa is our head of marketing. Her and her team put together this awesome event. It's a great question, actually. This is something that we've wrestled with a lot in a positive way, actually. And it's something that we've kind of like navigated around a little bit. And I wouldn't say we have like the answer to this, but one of the pieces of the answer that we've determined over the last year especially is that we actually don't want to dilute what we're doing. Like, we don't want to dilute the idea of repairability. We don't want to dilute the idea that computers can be cool. What we want to do is actually make our computers so cool and so accessible that we're bringing people into this culture. Because like, this is an awesome culture. Like, the idea that you can like open stuff up and swap parts around and customize it and make it yours, it's awesome. Everyone should have access to that. And the things that are preventing people from accessing it today oftentimes is that devices are designed in a way where it is intimidating. Like, opening up like a MacBook Pro and getting inside, or opening up an iPhone and getting inside. If like that was the only thing you ever saw or thought of when you thought about like the idea of repair, then of course you're gonna be afraid of repair. Like, of course you're gonna think that upgradability is a pipe dream. And so for us, like, especially as we think about products like the Framework Laptop 12, we want to make it awesome. We want to make it like a fun product that you want to have. And we want to make it so easy and so accessible that it brings you into this space, the space that all of us here are in.
Hello, I'm Tahina. A lot of educators have had issues with Chromebooks in education. With the Framework 12, are you guys trying to enter the education market? And if so, how will you be different from some of these other companies that are trying to enter the education market with laptops?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with the Framework Laptop 12, education actually is a core focus. Like I said from the start, actually, the place we started was, how do we go into high schools and middle schools and actually replace the closet full of broken Chromebooks that they all have? And so we've been working with the team closely at Intel on this, their EDU team as well, to get their inputs and their feedback. And we've really thought through basically like, what does a school need to have in order to make a product last longer, make a computer last longer? And still from our starting point, like, we're still, for this first generation of Framework Laptop 12, a little bit more consumer focused in how we're doing the go-to-market on it, how we're doing the marketing, how we're bringing it to market. And part of that is just that we know that schools are gonna need time to test it and pilot it before they insert it into a classroom or into a school district. So basically we wanna like take this coming school year for that to be kind of like our piloting year in schools. And so like, if schools reach out to us with like, hey, we want to test this thing out, like, we're absolutely going to work with them and be like, yeah, let's test it out. We want to bring this into your classrooms. We want to see what happens. We want to let people open it up and start repairing it and letting that be part of the whole product. Like, it's the computer and the computer class. And then as we learn from that, then scale up our efforts, much like we started from consumer on Framework Laptop 13 and scaled up business and enterprise.
Okay, we have time for one last question.
Thanks for having me here, by the way. The framework obviously started with the 13-inch, and then you introduced a 16-inch, and then today you've doubled the product lines that you support. And it sounds like there's a lot more that's on the roadmap. There's obviously a lot of speed of bringing all of this innovation to the market. How do you think about making sure you maintain that speed of innovation as you also increase like your product, supply chain, design complexity across all these different product lines?
Yeah, sure, that's a great question. I mean, part of this is that we are very deliberate about pacing ourselves around product expansion and category entry. Like, we are in this for the long haul. So we don't want to go out there in a year and launch 10 different new products in 10 different categories and then attempt to maintain and grow all of those at the same time. So we've been very deliberate every year to take on a bit more each year. Obviously, this year we took on maybe a bit more than that. But part of this is that we grow our team carefully and deliberately to make sure that we're scaling a little bit ahead of where we need to be from the products we're supporting. So whether that's across like supply chain or logistics or design and engineering teams or marketing teams or go-to-market, marketplace teams and support teams, we're being careful not to be like the rocket ship startup mode where you double your team every year and then something falls off and the company implodes. We're being careful about growing it just at the right pace and the right speed that we can continue to bring the products and the product philosophy to more people across more categories, but in a way that we can guarantee both our financial self-sufficiency and, of course, our ability to actually support each of those products that we're launching. All right, I think that's all we had time for. If folks haven't gotten hands-on on all the products, we still got 1 more hour out there, so you can get back there with the Framework Desktop and the Framework Laptop 12. And thanks again for coming out here.